So you've probably heard at some point or other, build what people want. But how do you know what people want without running surveys, asking 1,000 people, or guessing wrong? In this episode, I'm going to show you how to develop that ability to see the signal before others do and build things that actually land. Here's why most people get this wrong. They basically build what they want and not what people will pay for. They chase trends or copy existing things with no edge, nothing new being added or nothing innovative. Or they ask for opinions but don't actually study behavior. Actions speak louder than words is basically what I'm saying here. Also, validation is often too late or misleading. From my perspective, you don't need everyone's opinion. You need pattern recognition, insight, and real action. Rather than listening to what people say or listening to the words that someone's saying, watching their behavior is far more important, in my opinion. More or less, you ignore what they say, observe what they do, what they are willing to pay for, or repeat doing, repeated actions. So what do I mean by observing patterns, behavior, and not words? People tend to say one thing but act differently. You've probably met someone who said something, but you could tell obviously from body language or maybe the way they said it or the general surroundings or the situation, and realize that they mean something different than what they've actually said. Another thing you can do is observe people, watch what people actually do with their time, what people actually do with their money and attention. So what are they paying attention to? One example I can think of is platforms people use despite the user experience, the UX being poor. Figuring out why and what keeps them coming back is integral here or key here in order to observe or to try to figure out what is it. I mean, for me, if the user experience or the user interface is poor, I don't tend to use that product for very long. But I have observed in multiple cases where people will continue using something even though it's utterly, it's abysmal. Sometimes the reason is that it's the only or the best option, so you can't really blame people for that. And that's actually where you can seize opportunity if you can figure out a way to do so when you've noticed this gap in the market and noticed that people are willing to use this product and the user experience isn't that great. So frankly, you could merely upgrade or update or figure out a way to bring a better user experience, and you wouldn't even have to modify any of the existing features. Another suggestion is follow the friction. Look for pain points, look for inefficiencies. These can be gold mines. What you can ask yourself is, what frustrates people repeatedly? What do you notice people complaining about? And this comes very easy for me because I complain about a lot of things, namely because I can see the flaws in things. So observe multiple people, not just one person, but you can observe one person and notice the things that are frustrating them. And even if the things are different, it is possible that there's a connection there as well. There might be something that can work as sort of a middleman there. I was thinking of examples from personal projects or projects that I've worked on in my life or that I've started. And I think it's better to just kind of think of the most localized example, which is this podcast. Originally, we would travel to a location to record with someone else's equipment. We'd, of course, pay for that service. However, having a place where I can now record freely and plan, basically take the entire day if I want to record or to discuss topics or to research topics, etc. And I no longer have to travel, an hour or two each way in order to record. And this, for me, unlocks value. So I know that we're talking about things that we can do to unlock value insofar as a company that you start or a product that you want to sell, but you can also look inwards, because when things are easier for me, when value is unlocked for myself, that unlocks energy, that unlocks potential for me to now do better at what it is that I'm working on, or for me to have more clarity or focus or ability to focus. So keep in mind that value is not always something that is generated for the client or the customer or whatever it might be. Another useful tip is to use yourself as a proxy when you're the user. If you feel the pain and deeply understand the space or the genre, you're often the best starting point. So when, of course, earlier I said don't just create something that's for you, or something that you like, rather. What I mean there is that if you have decided on a product, let's say you're working with somebody or you have your own product idea, while you might have some influence on the product, let's just use the word product for now, or the thing that you're creating to that you'd like to generate value with, or rather, I guess you could say, well, you're creating something that has value for other people. You can use yourself as a jumping off point, is what I'm saying here. So if you do understand the space, or if you do understand the ecosystem, or if you do understand the, let's say, category of what type of product you're selling, you can be a good starting point with figuring out where the pain points are. However, I would say that it's very important to detach yourself, or detach rather, from ego, and test whether others experience it the same way. The goal here is to talk about how to not have to basically rely on other people, sure, to just decide how to tackle an idea. However, you should still test it with some people to make sure that you have detached yourself from your ego. Otherwise, you may, have a bias. Having a bias, I feel like this is obvious, but I'm just going to say why I think this is poor, just in case. It can lead you down the wrong path. It's the same thing I've discussed previously about emotions sort of getting out of control, and emotions making decisions for you, or rather making decisions based on emotion. I think also making decisions based on one's ego could also be detrimental. Like I said, I want to avoid relying on others to make decisions. So what I'm going to suggest here is test with action, not with surveys. Asking someone, for example, would you buy this, to me is worthless. I feel that a simple landing page, maybe a direct message offer, or an early prototype, or an MVP if it's maybe a software, speaks louder than just asking someone straight up, would you buy this? Something that doesn't even exist yet. And you're not even offering anything. You're just saying, like, here is some idea and would you buy it? I mean, this is what I'm getting at. It's not really, the answer you're going to get is it's either yes or no, right? In one way or another. And I don't feel that yes or no here really helps you. I just don't see the value you get from that feedback. So what I would do is, like I said, create something, take action, and then share how you've validated something by building it first, like I said, and basically not asking. You show them what you've created. And then let that creation, let's say, speak for you and showcase that. And that way, it's easier for someone to make a decision on whether or not they actually would buy this hypothetical product. I'm going to introduce a simple framework to build for real demand. It's called, I'm going to call it a 4-step want radar. So in quotes, want radar. The first step for this is to spot behavior. I'm going to be reiterating some of the things I've said previously. So you're going to try to spot a behavior or friction point. What does that mean? You can look for, scroll through patterns, look at spending habits, look through comments. I use comments all the time, not just comments on things that I'm involved in. I mean, just generally when I want to learn about a product, or if I want to learn about what people don't like about a product, I'm going through comments on multiple storefronts, let's say, if it's something that's being sold online, for example, in order to see what people are saying. Sometimes you won't really get useful information here, but sometimes you'll get enough information, you'll start to more or less recognize a pattern. And I look for patterns not in what people say that it's, well, I look for what's good about a product. People will say, like, oh, the shipping's good, or, which I don't ever understand why that really is a comment on the product itself, but what they're saying is good about it, sure. But I look at the complaints. I'm looking for what's wrong with it. I'm not just looking, if there's even 5 of them, if they're not similar, I don't really look at those as key indicators of this product being poor. In fact, I just look at those as anomalies. When I start seeing complaints about the same thing over and over again, then that's what I'm talking about. That's spotting the friction point, or looking at what it is that is lacking. Okay, so number 2 in the 4th step framework here is to ask, what outcome are they really chasing? Okay, so not which tool, more or less the transformation that they're looking for, or the shortcut that they're looking for. What do I mean by shortcut? Oftentimes when you buy something, you're buying it so that you can make something in your life easier. We don't tend to buy things to make our lives more difficult. So we're always looking for some sort of shortcut, whatever it might be. And a transformation, this word sounds a bit vague, but what I mean by transformation is, what is it you're trying to change in your life, let's say? So while a shortcut makes sense, transformation means just something. Let's say you want to redecorate your room or your apartment or your home, or if you want to, I don't know, change something about your lifestyle or something that you use on a daily basis, etc. Those are transformations. Basically anything that transforms your current present self or your current present life into something hopefully better. So that's more or less what I mean by transformation. The third thing, create the minimum version, or I guess you could call it an MVP, minimum viable product, that gets them that outcome, gets the customer, gets the client the outcome that they're looking for. What is the shortcut? What is the transformation? So build the minimum version of that. Just enough so that you have something to validate the idea. So let's say you're creating an internet platform. Don't create the entire platform with all the features. Just create what relieves the problem. So what is the main problem? What is the main pain point here? What it is that we're trying to solve? What is it we're trying to create a shortcut for? Create the minimum amount for that, and then you can move into other features. And the last one is to put something, so take this minimum version and put it in front of people as fast as possible. That's what I'm saying. It's like you want to get to the goal as fast as possible. You want to create something as fast as possible, not sloppily, not saying that you should just slap something together, but you should try to work as efficiently as possible to create the minimum version so that you can get something in front of people. Why? Because then you can do small tests. You can send direct messages if you're selling something. You can put people on the wait list. And so why do you want to do this as fast as possible? It's so that you can start sending those direct messages. You can start waitlisting people, getting people interested. For example, you could put something on Gumroad or on just somewhere where you can sell this minimum version, or at least see what type of interest you might get, or provide early access. This is very popular, I feel, these days. You can use something like Patreon, for example. You have a Patreon account and people can get early access to the minimum version, your early adopters. So this is really useful. And of course, what types of things that we're looking for here are people asking, when is this ready? It's not that they're impatient, it's they're excited. So I guess they're impatient with anticipation, which is a good thing. Instead of just someone saying, oh, that's a good idea, or oh, that's a cool idea. You're close to what you're, close to starting, but you want to get started. You want to get people interested. You want to get people, lining up for what it is you're trying to provide here. I would like to go over some of the common pitfalls so that we can know what to look out for. One thing that you definitely don't want to do is build something for applause instead of utility. So earlier I mentioned people asking, when is it ready? But what I mean by applause, though, is like you're not looking for someone to say, wow, that's a really great idea, or wow, that's really cool, because you don't really know yet if it has any use or if it has functionality that is required, or if it does actually relieve one of those pain points, or if it does create a shortcut or a transformation in someone's life. So I would say make sure there's utility. Make sure you have a minimum version that actually does something, and don't look for people being super excited. So earlier, I meant excited. What I mean by that is people that are actually excited for something that actually exists and that they have a reason to be excited for. Another thing, which might not make sense at first, is basically falling in love with the solution instead of the problem. Now, it might not make sense. It's not intuitive to say like you should fall in love with the problem, but what I really mean here is that you're here to solve a problem. You're not here to, while you are looking for a solution, and the solution is important, the solution doesn't matter until you recognize what the problem is and recognize that the only thing that your goal should be is to solve said problem, but the actual solution itself isn't important, because the solution, when you get to a solution, that means you've solved the problem. So that means the thing that is lacking in people is the thing that is lacking, or the thing that is going to create that shortcut or create that transformation, it will already exist once you've gotten to the solution. So being obsessed with the end game doesn't help if you don't actually know how to solve the problem. So what I'm saying is people want to skip to the end of things and they want to fantasize about where they're going to be, but that doesn't matter, because if you don't know how to get there, or if you haven't planned out how to get there, then you have no way of getting to the solution. So there's really no reason. Another thing is, like I mentioned earlier, basically overbuilding or overdoing it before testing. Create the minimum version, create the minimum viable product, test it out as soon as possible. In fact, you should always be testing throughout product. I don't know what to call it, like all the phases of creating the product. Obviously not the planning phase, but like once you've created any part of it or any functionality, you should test it. So don't get ahead of yourself here, because like what a lot of people, again, what they want to do is they want to get to the solution. So they start building, let's say there's 10 components to the product, or 10 components to, let's say, a software. They want to flesh out all 10 of them, or a large number of them, before they actually do any testing. And then they realize that 6 out of the 10 don't work, or wouldn't work, or that they need to pivot, etc. And now all you've done is you've got yourself into a big mess. The last thing that I would bring up for common pitfalls is mistaking silence for success. What I mean by this is, let's say the product's selling, right? You're creating revenue, but you're not getting any feedback. Some people might see that as a good thing, because they might think that feedback just means that they're going to get complaints or something negative. Whereas I would say it's the exact opposite. You want as much feedback as possible. You want both negative and positive feedback, so you know what needs to be fixed, what problems you need to tackle next, or what you're doing right, so that you know that you can move on to the next thing, let's say. Because when no one gives you feedback, that is your feedback. That's basically saying people aren't really that interested. Okay, let's go through a scenario. All right, so for whatever reason, you've decided you want to create a digital product, but you have no idea where to start. So let's walk through this together and see where we would go from here. So you want to build something. You maybe you want to build a guide or a SaaS tool, SaaS, software as a service, sorry. Or let's say you want to create a template pack, but you don't know what people want. So you definitely don't want to waste your time, and you want to build something that quote unquote hits, something that will be trending really quickly, or something that will penetrate an area of the market that someone else is missing, or whatever it might be. Okay, so using the steps or using the methodology that I explained earlier, you're going to be trying to spot people's behavior or look for friction. So I would say start with where you already are or where you spend your time. Let's say you hang out in a few business forums or Discord groups or whatever it might be online, and you keep reading the same thing over and over again. You keep noticing the same frustration. I want to launch, but I'm stuck on what to offer first. So you see this not once, not twice, but 5 or more times, but just worded differently. That's a signal. That is your signal. So now you want to ask yourself, what outcome are they really chasing? What outcome are we looking for here? They're not asking for hand-holding. They're asking for clarity, and they want it fast. They want to skip the noise. They want to choose a direction that they won't regret, or a direction that won't lead them the wrong way. So you're looking for what is the underlying desire. I'd say it's basically help me decide what to build so I don't waste time. It's really simple. You don't have to overcomplicate it. So you, like I mentioned earlier, you want to create the minimum that delivers that aforementioned outcome. You don't build a whole coaching program, for example. If you're thinking to create a coaching program, you would create something small. Okay, so you make a small, clear decision tool. Maybe even just a 1-page PDF with like 5 idea tests and a ranking system. You could name it something like offer clarity in 20 minutes. Okay, something like that, something catchy. And that's it. You will spend maybe 2 to 3 hours on that instead of spending 2 to 3 weeks on it. That might not sound like a lot, but this is how you get started. This is, for me, what I think is the best way to get somewhere, because you've now created the minimum solution to the problem that you're trying to solve. You've identified a problem, and now you've created a simple solution, and now it's time to, move on to step 4, which is to put it in front of people so that you can decide where to go from here. So let's say you post a short message in the same communities that I mentioned earlier, where it is that you spend your time. You say something like, I made a 1-page tool that will help you pick a clear offer to build in 20 minutes. Would you like a free copy? Reply or DM, direct message. That way, the ball's in their court. So you are putting yourself at the mercy of other people's action. But assuming you've created something, if you're in the right places and you're, like I said, you've noticed people asking for this already, you should have now, since you've seen at least 5 different indicators that 5 different people wanted this, you should have at least 5 people replying or DMing you, right? But that's it. There's no sales funnel here. There's no ad budget. What I'm getting at is you don't have to spend anything really other than a couple hours of time. And like I said, if you have 3 to 5 people who ask for it, you now have your early adopters and you have feedback. Unfortunately, on the other side, if no one is interested, you don't get any bites, let's say, that's when you pivot. Don't get stuck on one idea. That's another topic in and of itself. But don't get stuck on one idea. Use the feedback that you get to move on or move forward. Forward sometimes means in a different direction completely, and sometimes forward means just moving forward with the current idea you're working on. That is basically building what people want. You look for what they want, and you don't have to ask 1,000 people, okay? You don't have to ask anyone, actually, because you've done your due diligence. You have done your research. You've listened to behavior or looked for a certain behavior. You've responded with clarity, and you can act fast. It's not magic. It's not guessing. It's just look for a pattern, offer clarity, or find clarity, rather, test, and repeat. So like I said, you don't want to be asking 1,000 people about this. You watch 5, 10 people build something that one of those 10 people will use, then scale. okay, or a few people that will use it, then scale. So if I were to summate everything that I've said until now, the ability to build what people want comes from pattern recognition, the courage or the know-how to ship early, or just honestly, yeah, I like the word courage here, to basically create that minimum version and just get it out there. A lot of people get stuck on, they're just scared. They're worried, like, what if people don't like it? Well, that's, how do you know? How do you know if somebody doesn't like something until you put it out there, or put yourself out there? How do you know if someone doesn't like you unless you're, in the public eye, right? And of course, you need to learn how to, or learn the discipline to listen to results instead of your own ego. And that's where I'll leave us.